Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay, welcome everybody to the Penrith Town Council meeting on the 29th of March 2021. I normally have a great big long spiel about why we're doing this way, but due to current government COVID-19 restrictions, this meeting is a virtual meeting being held via video conferencing and will not take place in a physical location. The meeting link will be available on the Town Council website afterwards for anybody who wants to watch it. I need to let you know that we have our Town Clerk, Services and Contract Manager and Deputy Town Clerk on the call as well. Officers are there to provide procedural advice and manage the virtual meeting process. We're unable to guarantee that each participant will remain connected throughout the meeting for obvious reasons. Can I make everybody aware, I've just said it once, but I'll just to make everybody aware, the meeting is being recorded. Please could everybody make sure your phones are set to silent or switched off, so we don't get interruptions. Mute your microphones and switch off your camera unless you are a councillor, and only unmute when you're asked to speak. And if I call your name, please respond and try to spend as much time looking into the camera as you can. Thank you. Also, please be aware that there are sometimes time lags on the video, so allow time for participants to respond. And please, those of us that are councillors, please can you make sure that you adhere to the council's code of conduct, general standing orders and meeting etiquette guidance to support me as I manage the meeting. And please be aware that some people may just be joining by phone and might not be available by video. That gets all of the important stuff out of the way. So let's start the meeting. So the first item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please?
We only have Councillor Donald's apologies at this moment, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is anybody else aware of any other apologies that haven't been given to the clerk? No. Okay. Item number 2 then is the minutes. This is an item to note that the minutes from the Planning, Finance and CCEG committees have been circulated and published on the website since our previous meeting. And to confirm that you're all happy with the full council meeting minutes as well. Can I ask each of you to approve the minutes for the virtual full council held on the 25th of January 2021 as a true and accurate record, and agree they be signed as such where permissible? I'm going to move the motion. Can I ask someone to second that, please?
I will.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. So I move the motion that the minutes of the meeting be approved and adopted, and I'm just going to ask each of you in turn if you're for, against or wish to abstain from that vote. So starting with Councillor Bergin.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
For.
Thank you. Councillor S. Clark.
Absent.
Not with us. Okay. Councillor Davies has given apologies. Sorry, no, Councillor Donald's given apologies. Councillor Davies.
For.
Thank you. Sorry, Jonathan. Getting my names mixed up. Councillor Fallows.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins. Not joined us. Councillor Jackson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon. Not with us. Councillor Naggs.
For.
Thank you. Councillor C. Shepherd.
For.
Thank you. Councillor M. Shepherd.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Snell.
For.
Thank you. That looks like far too many Fs to be anything other than fully approved. Thank you. Item number 3, declaration of interest and requests for dispensation. This is an item to receive declarations by members of interests in respect of items on this agenda and apply for dispensation to remain, speak and or vote during consideration of that item. We've not had any declarations of interest prior to the meeting. Does anybody have any they wish to shout out now? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, for another council, I am on the 66 liaison group as per item 12 on the agenda, so I'll just declare that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Why am I hearing phones ringing? Where's
Yes,
that
the office phone's ringing.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's fine. Okay, item number 4 then is public participation to receive questions or representations which have been received from members of the public.
Chair, I think Councillor Clark might be trying to speak, but she's muted at the moment.
I'm unmuted at the moment. I'd just like to declare that I'm also a member of Penrith District Council.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't want any
Okay, so yeah, so item number 4 is public participation to receive questions or representations which have been received in advance from members of the public. I understand that we have a question from a member of the public which Councillor Jackson is now going to read out and respond to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Jackson, would you like me to read out the question and you make the response? Would that be helpful?
Yes, please.
Okay, there's a question for the Town Council and a supplementary question. I'll do the question first. Councillor Jackson will respond, and then I'll do the supplementary question to which Councillor Jackson will respond. I apologise if you hear an echo. The minutes from a recent meeting regarding the neighbourhood plan showed comments from the independent planning examiner, which we found concerning. He mentioned potential for small-scale tourist development, such as forest lodges, pods or glamping facilities on the Beacon Forest. We feel the examiner may not have taken on board the huge strength of feeling that was shown in 2018 during the master plan engagement exercise, when the overwhelming majority of responses asked for the Beacon Forest to be protected and preserved as a wild space. Its beauty, tranquility and its wildlife were all felt to contribute greatly to our physical and mental well-being. With lockdown, this has been even more important to us, and we are grateful to LAUDA for keeping the whole forest open during this difficult time. In addition, the forest has immense biodiversity, yet the examiner only mentions it is home to red squirrels. So again, we feel that the examiner has perhaps not looked at the evidence Penrith Beacon sent in 2018 of the numerous species that inhabit the forest. Will the Town Council take account of and respect this strength of feeling for protecting and preserving the whole Beacon Forest in any discussions on the future of the forest, and ensure that all participants in the process are aware of how important the forest is to so many of us? End of question. Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Viv. In response to the question, may I first thank you for this and for the many emails we have received regarding the Beacon following posts on social media. Can I reiterate that the Beacon is privately owned and has one permissive path to the Beacon itself from Beacon Edge. None of the other paths are either permissive or public footpaths and cross commercial forestry. The Town Council has no plans for housing on the Beacon, as it doesn't have ownership of the land, the power to build housing, or indeed the desire to see any development on the Beacon. Previous housing plans for the Beacon that have been referred to in some emails were as part of Eden District Council's master plan for the area. The master plan was shelved in 2019. If any plans were to come forward, they would have to be made by the landowner or their representatives and be subject to a separate planning application that Eden District Council would consult upon and consider. It has always been the intention of the Town Council to try to protect the front of the Beacon by trying to designate it as a local green space in the neighbourhood plan. To be satisfied for designation, green space has to fulfil a set of national criteria. These are: number 1, must be in close proximity to the area it serves. 2, it must be considered to be demonstrably special to the area. And 3, it must not be an extensive tract of land. At the public examination, the independent planning inspector had seen the responses to our previous consultations and the report from the master plan consultation. The planning inspector gave examples of the biodiversity on the Beacon and the sorts of developments that he suggested might be suitable for part of the Beacon. He was assured and indeed satisfied that the first 2 points, namely that it is in close proximity and that it is demonstrably special, were met. He had serious concerns, however, about the size of the area and whether it met the Secretary of State's basic conditions, as it would be by far the largest piece of local green space in the country. The inspector could see how special the area was to the people of Penrith and suggested that rather than trying to designate it as local green space, which may indeed fail, he suggested that perhaps it would be better if the Town Council set a policy within the Neighbourhood Development Plan for the Beacon in its own right. At the present time, all of this privately owned land already falls under policies defined by Eden District Council's local plan. Planning inspector asks that the landowners and Town Council meet, facilitated by Eden District Council, to explore the possibility of drafting such a policy, which would be put to the inspector as a recommendation that could be made in his report to afford it some sort of protection. It must be stressed that this would only be in relation to the front of the beacon and not the commercial private forestry behind. To date, there has been one meeting with Eden District Council and representatives of the Lowthers and ourselves to gather information. The Town Council's position has not changed, but when any policy written by the Town Council comes forward, it will need to be reviewed and approved by the full Town Council before going to the planning inspector. The response ends.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. The supplementary question. In the report on the post-analysis of the master plan engagement, it suggested any future discussions on the Beacon Forest involve the local community, including interested groups. Will the Town Council be involving local community groups such as Friends of Penrith Beacon and others as part of these discussions? Question ends.
Thank you. When the master plan was drawn up by Eden District Council and shelved in 2019, they suggested that any future discussion about this area would be included within revisions of the local plan. It will be up to Eden District Council to involve local groups as well as the Town Council in any such discussions. Response ends.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, and thank you, Viv. Okay, so the next item on our agenda then is to receive reports from district and county councillors. I'll start with county councillors first. So, Councillor Bell, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Beacon Edge is the boundary between my division and Hilary's for some of its length. And last week it was agreed that there'll be a 40-mile-an-hour buffer zone on Beacon Edge to traffic coming from Langwathby Road towards Fell Lane. The idea is to slow down the traffic before it reaches Fell Lane, and the hope is that the new signs will go up sometime around the end of May. This is the first measure to be implemented on Beacon Edge to try and solve the problems around speeding traffic, cars parking on the pavement, and the difficulty in crossing the road. We're expecting to see some designs later in the year, and they'll be available for consultation. I know the Beacon Forest is on your agenda, and I've listened carefully to the question and the answers that you've just given, and I'd like to follow in similar vein. I'd like to take the opportunity on behalf of the many residents who've been in touch to publicly thank Cllr for allowing the residents to use the Beacon Forest. It's been an absolutely lifesaver to residents, and especially during lockdown. And I'd like to share with Penrith Town Council members that residents absolutely do appreciate that this is a commercial forest, but they really value the way in which Cllr has managed the forest, the wildlife, the wildness of the area, and they fervently hope that there will be no development of any kind in the forest. They hope that, quite apart from the neighbourhood plan, the Town Council will use its influence and hopefully its power to maintain the access that we have at the moment, and to work as best they can, recognising it's not theirs to make decision to discourage any development in the forest area. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Carrick, you wanted to say something as well, I think.
If I can, thanks, Chair. Right, the first thing I'm going to mention is a follow-on from something I mentioned at the previous meeting, which is about the highways work taking place at the junction of the A6 Sorkled Road and Inglewood Road. The last time I updated the Town Council, it had gone through an initial consultation and a number of concerns had been raised by the residents. I said at the time that it would be reconsidered, which it was. A revised design has been produced. The residents have been consulted again on the revised design, There being no objections to that design, the work is now taking place on the ground. So anybody going up to that end of town will be, well, up until today, inconvenienced by the four-way traffic lights and the bollards in the middle of the road and a few other things. But the work is now taking place. But just to say, rest assured, if it does cause us any difficulties, then in the fullness of time, that design will be reviewed. So, you know, I'm on the case, as you might say. I was going to raise also, as Pat has done, the buffer strip along Beacon Edge. So I don't think there's any need to reiterate that one. Just to alert you to the fact that I have received a complaint about speeding up Wordsworth Street in the last few weeks. It's one of those issues that crops up every now and again on a reasonably regular basis. I'm pleased to report that it hasn't been a reported issue for probably a couple of years now, but certainly one individual has expressed her concern at the speeding, and I gather she's garnering the opinion of her neighbours to see how strong that feeling is, how many other people are concerned by it. Finally, on a slightly more positive note, well, a couple of things actually. The County Council will be opening a new residential children's home in Huntley Avenue, which they're hoping to open shortly after Easter. So I'm sure there will be the opportunity for town councillors to actually go round to have a look. I know they're doing a virtual tour at the moment. It may be possible for you to do that in the short term, but certainly when it's open, they are hoping in the better weather to involve a group of us in something like a barbecue, maybe in the summer, you know, just so we can have a look round in person and see what that's like. But certainly I did the virtual tour last week and it looks excellent. It really does look excellent. Purpose built. And on a final good piece of news, now that we're moving from the reaction to the recovery phase with the COVID, hopefully, she says, with absolutely everything crossed at this point in time, on the 12th of April, something that I know is of concern to Penrith residents, the Penrith Library will be reopening again on a phased reintroduction. So it'll be Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 12:30, and then 2:30 to 4:30. There will be a maximum of 12 people at any one time, but it is sort of moving us back to some sort of normality. And I know that is one of the services that an awful lot of people value in town. So thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick.
Councillor Lawson, Councillor Holden would like to speak if possible, please.
Yeah, just getting to that. Councillor
Thank
Holden,
you.
over to you.
Right, thank you. Sorry, I was just clicking on my microphone and video. They have worked now. Thank you for the opportunity to talk at this meeting about things that are going on in Penrith North, the district level. I'm a bit concerned. I was mentioning to the meeting this evening that the improvements to the A6 Inglewood Road, Cllr Road junction are not actually taking place at the moment. I understand, and I don't know if Hilary knows this, but it's a gas pipeline that's being put in at the moment, which has caused the four-way different traffic lights, which is quite a big lot of manoeuvring to do. And that there has been an informal consultation on the improvements to that A6 junction, which is in desperate need of improving. And there will be a more formal consultation, I am told, by the people in highways this summer, June and July. That's what's proposed. So maybe I've got my wires crossed. So forgive me, Councillor Carrick, if I have. But I understood, and I did talk to the workmen doing the work at the A6 junction the other week. And they said, yes, we're putting in a gas pipeline. We've got to go all the way across the A6, which is a huge task. Anyway, that's done. And I'm expecting a formal consultation for the improvements to that junction from County Council Highways, June, July this summer. Okay. Also, in conjunction with the Council Highways, there are more improvements planned for the junction with Drovers Lane and Portland Place, which is right by the town hall, which will be familiar to many of you. And that again is going through more consultation. I'm not quite sure when that's happening, but I understand, you know, there is work and there are plans to improve that junction as well. There's always a tail back, always to back to Drovers Lane from Portland. Sorry, yeah, back to Drovers Lane from Portland Place. in tandem with all the traffic lights, pedestrian crossings and everything else that's happening just further around the corner. So that'd be good news to get that improved. Following a resident's complaint, I've asked for better signage at the Drovers Lane Graham Street junction. It's all about junctions this evening. That junction, for those who live locally, and I do, I live on Graham Street. You come down Graham Street to Drovers Lane, cars are going northwards and not coming down from the northern exit. Sorry, I'm a bit confused how to describe this. Anyway, you come to the junction, cyclists have a two-way system, cars, vehicles, one-way system. And the signage, is, as this resident quite rightly pointed out, is not brilliant for a vehicle driver coming down Graham Street to understand that they actually might see cyclists coming from the right and they're not looking out for them. So that, I'm glad to say, came to the crash committee, and it will be considered, there will be finances for it in the 21-22 financial year. So there should be improvements there, which is good news to all of us driving our cars, and obviously halting at that junction, but look both ways anyway for the time being, please. Footpaths now. There recently a resident asked for a footpath to replace the grass verge from Green Lane on Cllr Road up towards the golf course. This is to take in the kind of circular path that pedestrians have been taking all through our COVID lockdown periods, and will continue to do so forevermore, I'm sure. But it is quite awkward going up Cllr Road. You come to Green Lane, where there is a nice footpath which Story Homes installed when they did their development there by Green Lane, and after Green Lane to the golf club is just a grass verge. It's quite dangerous. You have to step out to do the 2 metre distance, and a resident has asked for this to be looked into, to have a proper footpath there that will enable pedestrians to walk up to the golf course, golf club I should say, their driveway, and then cross over Cllr Road and then join the public right of way across the golf course down towards the cemetery path, which is a really nice circular route. So and I believe Hilary Councillor Carrick is possibly looking into this, but it would be good if that could be done. I think that's just an ideal slot to put in a new footpath, funding permitting, I'm sure. Also recently, and I've been working with, well, very, very recently, I've been talking to Councillor Ron Kenyon and Councillor Patricia Bell about a circular touring, a tour path really around Penrith. This was brought to my attention by a local resident, and he sent some examples from another authority, whereby taking in points of interest, there's a sort of tourist track really, trail round the town, the main town. So for us it will be Penrith. And Councillor Kenyon, I think he's here in this meeting, but he has walked many parts of this path that could be actually done fairly easily, I would suggest. So I would look to work with Councillor Kenyon, Councillor Patricia Bell, and anybody else, keen walkers or any rambling association or any groups that would really like to see a circular, be an outer tour around Penrith, not just right in the town centre. It would take in the outskirts and points of interest. Okay, and I think that we could all enjoy that in the future. That would be great. Lighting on our footpaths is something that's been brought to my attention, particularly with the awful thing happening in London. The girl who was murdered walking home. And I know there are places in Penrith where there are footpaths which personally I wouldn't like to walk down in the dark, or even in the daylight. Some of them, they're very narrow, bordered on every side by fences. So I would look to the Town Council to consider, when planning applications come in, about the footpath policy and about what can be done to help people feel safe when walking along footpaths. I don't mean those by the roadside, I mean pedestrian routes. Okay. Happy note, I'm happy to say that a resident asked the other week just for a waste bin to be put in the area between Beacon Park and Arthur Street. There's a green area there, nice open green space. Dog walkers going up towards the Beacon and back down would welcome a bin there, I'm sure, for the dog poo bags. And I'm happy to say that Eden District Council will be putting a bin there shortly. Let me know if you see it, please, and I can thank them. Okay, I think that's all I have to say, but thank you very much for your time, everybody. And do think about footway lighting. And if anybody wants a bin anywhere, let me know. It seems to work if you ask. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Councillor Clark, did you have a quick question? I can see you've got your hand up. You just need to take yourself off mute.
I think it may be very little relevance to this council, but I'd like you to know that Eden District Council now has 2 independent councillor groups. Following a split last week with the original independent group. We now call ourselves the independent group, and we are the original one, and the other 5 have taken it upon themselves to become the Independent Alliance group. It may be of some interest, but I think most of this has already been publicised already, but I'd just like you to know as well.
Thank you for letting us know,
I'll
Margaret.
issue a statement in due course.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is to consider if we have any items to be excluded. We don't have any. So then moving on to item 6, that's a report from me. Obviously, with the current restrictions, there's not an awful lot for me to do in terms of going out and about. However, I will say what I always say at this point, which is that our local businesses need your support. They're all about to start to open up in the next few weeks. So please think local and shop local. And also, as a very fortunate recipient of my first COVID jab last week, can I also point out that I saw on social media over the weekend that there were a lot of people that didn't attend their appointments at Penrith Hospital and various other locations that are giving jabs at the moment. If you are offered a jab, can I please plead with you, take the opportunity and get yourself vaccinated. Thank you. Item number 7 is a report from members. So for members to receive and note oral reports from other councillors regarding meetings they've attended as representatives of the town council. Do we have any of those today? I'll take the silence as a no.
I've got a few, 1 or 2 points replying to what the County Council EDC.
I'm afraid, Mr. Chair, that we've moved on from that matter.
Yeah, okay.
This is just any reports that you have of anything that you've done personally. Does anybody
on behalf of the? I suppose partly on behalf of the council, really, in a way. Does that fit in?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Very briefly, please.
So just comment about Fairhill Playground. We've got that going. It might be an issue which I flagged up with Ian Parker about people are parking up in that area, just above the roundabout. So it's I've just seen that coming in a few times down the road. It's cars are parked sort of beside the road there. So I just really want to highlight that as an issue to be passed on. Thanks to the comment about the footpaths, we're looking at that one. And Wordsworth Street, again, as a council hat on, Penrith Town Council hat, I've been helping my neighbour on that issue. She said that the county councillors came along, I think actually about 10 minutes, or maximum 10 minutes observation of the area. We're waiting to hear the report on what happens with Wordsworth Street, which is obviously important side. So yeah, I think that's all I need to mention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenyon. Anybody else got any reports on any meetings or anything else? Any representations? Councillor Clark, you're on mute again, Margaret.
I'd almost forgotten that we've had problems with very haphazard parking on Castle Drive, and I'd just like residents to be aware that that the wardens or the officers will be looking at that area in due course, and not the too distant future either. I'd just like people to be aware that that will take place, because Castle Drive is an absolute nightmare with parking. Some of it is possibly illegal. I'd just like residents to be aware that I've been trying to do something about this for some time, as I do keep getting questions asked.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I think that's probably it. I don't see any other hands up. So moving on then to item 8, which is the resolutions report. This is just an item to note the written report. So if you're all happy to do that, then we'll move on. Okay. Item 9 is the neighbourhood plan. Members, please note that the independent planning inspector has suggested, as we discussed earlier, that the town council considers an alternative to designating the front of the beacon as a protected green space by coming to a mutual agreement with the landowners on a policy specifically for that area. This is under development, and the examination is in abeyance until the inspector has all the relevant information. As I say, that's just an item to note, so there's no discussion to be had at that point. Item number 10, Newton-Rigg College. Members, please note that the land-based strategy group no longer meets, having completed their task of supporting Mr. A. Banford with his commission from the University of Cumbria to write a strategy document on land-based education. That is Cumbria Strategy for Post-16 Land-Based Education, Skills and Knowledge Transfer. There have been no meetings since the last report to the Council, and members can seek further information which can be found on the UOC website under the headline University of Cumbria establishes steering group to develop a land-based skills strategy. Again, that's just to note. Item number 11 on our agenda is the devolution transfer of assets, and I would ask you all to note the written report supported by lead member Councillor Jackson. Item number 12. The A66 Community Liaison Group. Members, please note that both the Council and the A66 Community Liaison Group received a presentation on the delivery of plans for the A66 improvements, and there have been no further meetings. Note that consultants acting on behalf of Highways England are undertaking a mammal study at Thackerbeck Field from the 15th of March, with daily visits for a further 21 days, and that a topographical study is also to be undertaken in the coming weeks. Item number 13, Rural Services Network Market Town Group. Please note there have been no meetings since the last report to Council.
Council Chair, can Councillor Davies just interject? Apologies.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Davies.
Sorry, Chair. I literally, 5 minutes before joining this meeting, they held a meeting, but I will bring a report to members once I've had time to digest everything that was discussed, because it was a 2-hour meeting that was one of those Zoom meetings you're glad to get out of.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Davies. So item number 14 is the parking and movement study. Again, you should have had an informal update report, which you're asked to note. Item number 15 is matters from the Finance Committee. Members are asked to ratify the following approved recommendations from the Council's Finance Committee from their meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of March. These matters have been considered and approved by members of the Council's Finance Committee, and the committee chair, Councillor Bergin, has requested that these matters be brought to the full Council for ratification. So I'm proposing the following matters, items A to E, be ratified, and ask for somebody to second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Shepherd, Charlie Shepherd. So I move the motion, and I'm going to ask people to vote for, against, or abstain, starting with, check my list, Councillor Bergin.
He's in the meeting, Mr. Chair. He's just muted.
Okay.
I've also lost my picture as well. So I was going to ask a question earlier on, but Councillor Holden partly covered that.
Okay. How do you vote on this one?
Can I just say by way of comment, very quickly?
Yeah.
Councillors would be forgiven if they looked at the front page of the Herald last week for thinking that the item number 15E had already been decided, whereas in fact it's purely a recommendation to come before the full council tonight, and then whether it be ratified or not remains to be seen. But I will vote for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Davies has got his hand raised.
Councillor Davies.
Hi, Chair. Before we vote on these, can we have time to discuss some of the items on there rather than just going straight into a vote?
When the matters are for ratification, it is literally just to sign them off, Councillor Davies.
Okay. So next vote, Councillor Clerk.
Well, due to developments on the Eden District Council this week, I haven't really had time to digest them as well as I would have liked, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Councillor S. Clark. Not with us.
No.
Councillor Davies.
As we can't discuss them, I'm going to vote against.
Okay. Councillor Donald is not with us. Got two Councillor Donalds. Councillor Fallows.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins, not with us. Councillor Jackson.
For, and if it please the chair, I'd like to put on record my thanks to the officers for another excellent internal audit report. And just to say again, for.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Naggs.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Charlie Shepherd.
For, and I would like to repeat Councillor Jackson's comment about the audit report. It's not often we see one as clean as that.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Shepherd.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Snell.
For.
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Item number 16 on our agenda then is matters from the Planning Committee. First item is a new policy, developer engagement policy. Members are asked to consider and ratify the developer engagement policy following its approval from the Council's Planning Committee from their meeting held on Monday the 1st of March. The committee chair, Councillor Jackson, has requested that the policy be brought to the full council for ratification. I would like to propose the policy for developer engagement be ratified. Can I ask someone to second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And again, it's just a vote to ratify. So starting with Councillor Bergen.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Sorry, for.
Thank you. Councillor S. Clark. Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Fallows.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Kenyon.
For.
Councillor Naggs.
For.
Councillor Shepherd.
T.
Charlie.
For.
Yeah. Councillor M. Shepherd. Mike. Mike with no mic. Thank you. And Councillor Snell.
For.
Thank you. That one's carried as well. Okay, and then item number 17 is the Coronation Garden asset of community value. Members are asked to note that Eden District Council's executive on the 19th of January considered the council's nomination for Coronation Garden to be registered an asset of community value. The nomination was approved and Coronation Garden has been included in the list of assets of community value maintained by Eden District Council. And then moving on to new business. Item number 18, Cumbria County Council COVID-19 recovery strategy. Members are asked to note the COVID-19 recovery strategy, which is out for consultation and is owned by the Cumbria Strategic Recovery Group, SRCG, as part of the Local Resilience Forum. The consultation will be open until 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 31st of March. Item number 19, Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. The Council has been asked to consider declaring support for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. I've got a note here that Councillor Naggs might have something to say about this motion.
Oh, thanks, Stuart. It just puzzled me a little bit. I mean, first of all, it was Extinction Rebellion that have asked us to bring this forward, as I understand it. And I just thought, is it a number of questions? If we approve this, what does it mean? What actions will we be involved in? I mean, is it just a meaningless gesture? And how often do we actually discuss parliamentary business, the business of the lawmakers? It's a long bill, and parliamentarians get the chance to discuss, debate, analyse, scrutinise, and suggest amendments. we don't. And there's already been 2 amendments turned down. One little problem with the bill itself, as I saw it, is that I've read a report from a Citizens' Assembly that was organised by 6 select committees, and it's asking for this to happen again. Well, it's already happened. Climate UK, I think it was called, had a Citizens' Assembly, discussed this very thing and made the recommendations. And on a national level, they're extremely expensive to run. So I wonder why they're asking for it again. But there's nothing local about this. It impacts the whole of the country, I know, but I mean the local issues, the potentially dangerous levels of nitrogen dioxide on some of the streets in Penrith. I'd like to see us addressing these local issues and making comment on those, on things like more pedestrian cycle routes, more green spaces, these things that affect our everyday lives. But more so, I mean, if we're going to approve this, surely we need to be saying in a motion why we're approving it. And one of the reasons perhaps we're approving it is to make additional points about local conditions. And the big hot issue for Cumbrians at the moment, and people in Penrith, residents have talked to me about this, is the coal mine. And if you go with the spirit of the bill, we could also be asking the parliamentarians who are involved to use their position of power to try and oppose in Parliament when it comes to the judicial review, or whatever it is, a public inquiry judicial review, to use their voice to stop the coal mine, because that is a local issue. So, I mean, I guess overall, not to ramble on too much, but it just puzzled me why we're discussing parliamentary business when in actual fact there are 237 private members' bills on the go as we speak, and almost as many again from government bills. I mean, are we going to be commenting on any bills that any member or any outside agency choose to send in and ask for our commentary on? And especially, I mean, there are actually, I don't know if anybody's seen this, but I checked up and there are actually 4 environmental bills being progressed as well. All on climate, such as there's the company transparency on the carbon in supply chains. So private companies are being asked to make a record and make an annual statement of the carbon footprint of their businesses. There's the air quality bill. There's based on that young girl who died, who lived on the South Circular in London. It was the first post-mortem that showed that she died from nitrogen dioxide. Or that was the primary cause of death. Then there's the buses zero emissions bill, which prohibits the registration of public service vehicles after 2025 that emit carbon. And there's the Clean Air Human Rights Bill, which will make it a human right to breathe clean air. So we've got all of these bills, and I just wonder why we are discussing this one. So, but I mean, so just a kind of point of query about, I think this is quite odd for a town council to be discussing a parliamentary bill that's going through Parliament, and it sets a precedent, or it could set a precedent. I think we need to consider that in doing this. And the second thing is, if we are going to approve this, because obviously I'm totally in agreement with the climate and ecological emergency. We've passed it already. We've done what we can as a town council in passing it. But I would say, if I would propose, if we're going to pass this, an amendment that says we also request that MPs who support the CEE Bill Alliance policy use their parliamentary voices to oppose the opening of a new coal mine in West Cumbria, whilst also supporting much needed investment to implement a comprehensive regeneration strategy targeting Cumbrian communities facing unemployment, deprivation and poverty. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just interject to explain why it's on the agenda. It came through an email circulation from the Cumbria Association of Local Councils, and we were asked to disseminate it, include it on our town council meetings. I agree, we've never been asked to consider a bill before. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So are you, just to be clear, Councillor Naggs, are you proposing an amendment to the motion before we vote on it?
Mr. Chair, we need to second, you need to second the original motion first, and then Councillor Naggs can ask for an amendment if that's satisfactory with everybody.
Okay. Can I second it?
Yes, you can, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Well, then we can have the discussion, can't we?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, but I don't know which way to go on this, is the truth. I mean, I think it is odd, and I think it sets a dangerous precedent for council business. But if we're going to do it, I think we need to localise it and take this opportunity to raise a very important issue in Cumbria that a very large number of people are talking about within Cumbria, within the UK, within Europe, and much, much further afield.
Councillor Snell.
Yes, for me, this has taken me a bit by surprise, because there are bills that have gone through that I would have liked the town council to have had a voice on. And particularly the bill that looked at people being safe on the streets. You know, I think we could have certainly, I mean, Deb.Holden mentioned the dreadful death of that young woman. And, you know, since then, I would have dearly liked to, obviously I can do my own personal protest or whatever, but I would, you know, like to discuss things like that at Penrith Town Council, which I think to make an immediate response to something like that is really important. And as Dave said, we have said that we are the, we have passed a climate emergency. So I'm a bit not sure where to go with this, because I didn't realise that we could actually impact Parliament as a whole. That's interesting to me. I'm all for it, but I didn't realise that was our role.
Councillor Davies and then Councillor Fallows.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councillor Snell there that there's a lot of things like the local electric bill we could have debated and supported to help communities and things and push that for Parliament. I mean, Councillor Naggs has made a proposal, but I would have proposed that we know that the bill is going through Parliament and would wish it speedy progress and hope that they would look at local issues as part of that bill. But given that we've declared a climate emergency as a council, I don't feel it's really that we should be now focusing on this as another supporting of a bill to go through Parliament. And if Councillor Naggs progresses his proposal there, I would table an amendment that we just look that we note that the bill is going through Parliament and wish it speed, and that we hope that they address local issues as part of it, and leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Fallows.
Thank you. Yeah, broadly echo those comments. I mean, obviously it's come to us because they have, the group behind it have used their organisation powers to promote this and get the support by contacting us, which is fine. But if we do get into that, it dilutes from what we should be doing. I would have to say that the coal mine issue, obviously that's in West Cumbria, it's not in Penrith itself, and there's a division of opinions as far as I can see from the newspaper within Penrith. There's definitely a division of opinions within the county, so I don't think it would at all be helpful to broaden it to that. I think if we're going to deal with local issues, yeah, Penrith, we better stick with that. So I couldn't support the amendment.
Thank you, James. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I quite agree with the sentiment that it's odd that we're looking at one particular parliamentary bill. There are that many that we'd all like to discuss. It would need a separate agenda item, item number such and such, responses to bills in Parliament, and we could be here for 3 or 4 hours each meeting discussing very important subjects. But by that point, we would have stopped being a town council and become a pressure group instead.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments?
So, Mr. Chair, we've got a proposed amendment from Councillor Naggs. If Councillor Naggs could be allowed to speak on that amendment, please.
Yeah, Councillor Naggs.
Well, gauging by the discussion, like I said at the start of this, I prefer us just to withdraw this and not approve it, because it's inappropriate business and sets a precedent for the future. So I prefer not to have an amendment, but not to have the motion. And I would propose the motion is dropped. Not because we don't support it. I mean, we quite clearly do. But I mean, if we approve it, what do we do? Do we write back to XR Rebellion and say, jolly good, our sentiments are with you? Or do we write to the parliamentary group that are proposing this? And then what difference would it make? So I think that whether we approve it or disapprove it, it'll make have very little effect, other than it will set a precedent for the kind of things that we could discuss in the future. So my preferred proposal after hearing the discussion was that we note the letter from XR Rebellion and move on.
Okay.
Can we vote on that amendment? Could somebody second the amendment, please? And then can we have a discussion and vote, please? Is Councillor Kent
Are you seconding that?
seconding?
Oh yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Ron. Okay. Do we need to have further discussion? Oh, Councillor Clark, you've got your hand up. I don't think you said anything originally. You're on mute again, Margaret.
I frankly don't think we should. We should be keeping to local issues and not getting ourselves mixed up with such a group. I'm sorry, but that's the way I think about it.
Okay.
So the motion on the table, Councillor Lawson, has been supported by Councillor Kenyon, and it's an amendment that the bill be noted.
Okay. Okay, let's vote on that then. Councillor Clark.
I'll vote for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fallows.
The bill to be noted.
Just
that's the
yeah, we're
amendment.
voting just to note it. Yeah.
For.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Jackson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon.
For.
Councillor Naggs.
For.
Councillor Charlie Shepherd.
For.
Councillor Mike Shepherd.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Snell.
For.
Thank you. That's passed. So that's the amended one. Okay. Thank you.
Chair, can I
Yes.
just, now that you've agreed that it becomes a substantive motion, so you do have to vote on it again, I'm afraid.
Okay, I should have remembered that from last time. Okay, so now that we've agreed that we're taking the amendment, now we have to actually vote on it. So Councillor Clark. For. Councillor Davis.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fallows.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Kenyon.
For.
Councillor Naggs.
For.
Councillor Shepherd.
For.
Councillor Other Shepherd.
For.
And Councillor Snell.
For.
Thank you. Okay, now it's passed.
So,
Can I
Mr. Chair,
can I just say, Mr.
Councillor
Chair,
Bergin.
Yep.
I think I've been omitted on both counts. It's probably not.
I do apologise. I do apologise. How would you like to vote?
Well, it's for on
Thank
both
you.
occasions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do apologise. Okay, item number 20, local government reorganisation consultation to consider the draft response that has been circulated to members to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, consultation for proposals for locally led reorganisation of local government in Cumbria. I need to ask for somebody to second the motion. Thank you, Councillor Naggs. Did we have any questions in advance?
No,
on this
Mr.
one?
Chair.
No. Okay, so we're
All
just-
members have seen the response and they contributed to the draft. So a final draft has been submitted.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to add to the discussion before we vote? No. Councillor Davis.
I would like to, sorry, but I can't see my picture, but I'll take Councillor Davis first.
Thank you, Chair. It just basically to note, having attended the various briefing sessions that have happened, that officers have then generated this response with our input from. I want to first of all thank the officers for the work they've put in on this. My personal view is I went into the open-minded to all the meetings as I've come tonight on this, but unfortunately the policies that we have put forward I feel are quite lacking for parish and town councils, and the report that's been put forward covers basically what we have as an option, but unfortunately I don't think the best option is there because we haven't had it addressed as a proposal from any of the councils.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Bergen, you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I sat in on the discussions that we had with the various proposals. I was impressed by what Catherine Fairclough said about the single unitary, but I was also more impressed, I think, by the idea of having what you might call a split decision, and more emphatically, I thought the Bay presentation was the best, and I would favour a north-south divide. It strikes me if we had a single one, where would it be based? I mean, would it be based in Carlisle or South Lakeland, or whether they would look for somewhere convenient in between the two? So I think it would be better if we had a north-south split. So I will vote accordingly. Thank you.
So anybody else? So Councillor Kenyon.
Yeah, no, I had a meeting and we voted on the overall, but I'm just thinking afterwards, and I was thinking beforehand as well that I lived here all my life, and there's very much a division between the north and the south of the area, and it is an awful long way from Carlisle to Barrow, and there's different people and different, well, not different people, but different areas. Barrow linking in with the Bay seems a good area down there, and I think ourselves in the north, north of Shap, north of Dunmail, Kirkstone Pass area seems a logical area, and I know we discussed it last time. I had actually mentioned about element of Copeland going with the south as well, because why Millam is in Copeland seems ridiculous, but that isn't on the agenda. But it just seems ridiculous that Millam and that area at the south is sort of linked into the Whitehaven. So I'm sort of feeling that really we are in the north of Cumbria and the mountains are in the way. It's linked to the south. Thank you.
I'm quite keen that this doesn't turn into a discussion about the various options themselves, because we are just sending a draft response and we're supposed to be voting on that. Councillor Charlie Shepherd, you had your hand up, and then Mike Shepherd as well, and then Councillor Naggs.
I'm supporting what we're saying to do. I understand what Councillor Kenyon said, but I don't want the boundary to be an even bridge, so that's where it used to be. But I think that this one will be easily the most least disruptive in the future, because it just means one level of changes. And I think that I'm very much in support of what our letter says. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Mike Shepherd.
I'm agreeing with Charlie and supporting what the officers have written on the grounds that in a unitary council we're better together, as we would have been in Europe and are with Scotland and Wales. I tried to have a look at the consultative document and found it really difficult to fill in because it was so open-ended. But I found that the response answered all my questions really, and I particularly like the fact that a directly elected mayor was considered an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy and cost. Thank you.
Councillor Naggs and then Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind what we've concluded in the letter. I mean, one of the things that will persuade the public as well, and probably will persuade the decision makers, is that it's the one that serves the most money. I'm not worried at all. We've had a discussion about what we want based in Penrith. We've got Vereda House, which we supported for the reason that we wanted a foothold here. The County Council already has offices in different parts of Cumbria and has meetings in different parts of Cumbria. Regularly they have meetings in Kendal, for example, not just Carlisle. And clearly a county-wide authority would need to have satellite offices everywhere. And I just think there'd be a much more powerful economies of scale with the notion that we're going for. And some of the most serious problems in Cumbria can only be solved by a strong unitary authority that covers the whole of the area for issues such as transport. But there are several other issues as well. But transport for Cumbria is the glaring one that can only be solved by a whole county basis. So I strongly support the letter as is written. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nags. Councillor Jackson.
Agree with what's just been said by Councillor Shepherds both and Councillor Nags. Economies of scale are completely diluted if you divide the county in two. The argument that a county-wide authority would be unwieldy falls down when you consider we do have a county-wide authority in Cumbria County Council, and they serve as well as any council can be expected to. And a unitary authority, it entrenches that strength and expands upon it, and allows, and in particular the county council proposal is the one that most eloquently speaks about how parishes can get involved and be represented and become the important part of this process that they need and should be. So I vote with, I will be voting along the lines that we have set out in the letter.
Okay. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, the only question I do have, Chair, is we've done this as a letter. The consultation that's out is quite, for the public, is quite strange because it's asking you to comment on each of the proposals. How are we proposing that this response is actually submitted to government on behalf of the council? Because obviously the consultation online is in a different format to this.
Mr. Chair, I can't get my video on at the moment. If you scroll down on the consultation, they do actually ask you to write, if you prefer to, addressing the main points. So that's why I've done it on that format because it's easier. I did check that the content of our letter aligned with their questions, and it did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. If nobody else has got any comments, then we need to vote on this one. So Councillor Bergin, for or against?
Well, on the basis that it ultimately won't be our decision, I'll vote against.
Okay. Councillor Clerk?
I'm going to abstain because I find myself out on a limb with this one, being a member of both councils.
Okay. Councillor Davies?
Vote for the response.
Thank you. Councillor Fallows?
For, yep.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon?
Vote against.
Okay. Councillor Nags?
For.
Councillor Shepherd?
Councillor C. Shepherd, for.
Thank you. And the other Councillor Shepherd?
For.
And Councillor Snell?
For.
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Item number 21 on our agenda is the Environment Agency Omega Proteins Limited, deep breath, EPR/HP3238AF/V002 environmental permit consultation to consider the draft response that's been circulated to members to the Environmental Agency consultation for Omega Proteins Limited, an application for changes or additions to existing activities. They are proposing changes to the following processes: blood drying, poultry offal processing, installation of a replacement multi-fuel thermal oxidizer, and replacement of 2 existing thermal oxidizers with 1 unit of the same design. I need somebody to second the motion before we go into any discussion. Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry, Chair. Could I just ask for Town Clerk just to clarify, as the council's liaison member, am I okay to take part in this?
Yes, you are. You've declared your interest.
In that case, I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Okay, so does anybody have any comments to make before we vote on the proposed draft response? Councillor Kenyon?
Yeah, just one point. I haven't looked at it all, and it might be in there somewhere, but we mentioned the beacon tonight, and where this is linked into this, but there used to be quite a nice view from the beacon, but now you go up there and there's this smoke coming out of there, and that seems to have appeared recently. Now, whether that's been, I have no idea when that's appeared, and it just destroys the view. Now, whether that could be linked into this proposal or whatever into the system, but I know it isn't the smell, it isn't anything else, but it's really the visual view from the beacon is, I won't say it's destroyed, but it certainly isn't enhanced by having all the day, the smoke coming up from over there.
Thank you, Councillor Kenyon. Any other comments before we vote? Councillor Clark?
Are we sure that this is smoke or steam?
It's probably steam, but it doesn't really matter. It's still the visual effect of looking out from the beacon. You look out there and you saw the town in the foreground, and then the hills in the background. But then you've got this steam coming up, or this white stuff coming up out of the Omega.
That's not part of the environmental permit consultation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Snell and then Councillor Davies.
I've got a question. I have noticed, I don't know if our response, I've read it, but can you tell me if we have any influence on any further developments on that site, and whether that is appropriate for this response or not? It's just that being on planning, I know that they put in retrospective planning controls, planning permission, and I drove past it the other day and it's just growing and growing and growing, and I don't know what we can do about it. Will this response make any impact on that?
Chair, again, this is for an environmental permit. It's not for planning. They'll come through the normal planning process.
I would agree with our Deputy Town Clerk. It's not about a broad planning response to the growth at Omega. This is environmental agency issues, and we have to keep to the consultation as they prescribe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
that's fine. If I can just finish off then, but
Thank you.
Anything that impacts on the environment, I think we need to be really watching out, and our meeting with the Environment Agency recently did say they would listen to anything that we said. So just to make a point that I think we need to make sure that we are kept aware of what's happening, whether it be planning or whether it be environmental issues.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Davies.
My question's been answered already, Chair, so it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're voting on the draft response. I will start with Councillor. Oh, hello, Councillor Charlie Shepherd.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you in full flow. I had a good look at this permit application, and it seems that everything they're doing in the revised permit is going to improve things. That's what it says, and I don't think there's any reason why we can go against it because of that. It claims to be all they're going to be permanent monitoring against national, international standards of emissions. And my only question was, who's going to make sure that they do it? But that's an environmental agency issue. It looks like an improvement technologically. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we're voting on the draft response. Councillor Bergin, for, against, or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Margaret Clark.
Councillor Clark declared an interest, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Fallows.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Kenyon.
For.
Councillor Naggs.
For.
Charlie Shepherd, Councillor. You're on mute.
Put a thumbs up.
Nope.
For. No,
For. Thank you.
Spacebar didn't do it.
Councillor Mike Shepherd.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Snell.
For.
Thank you. That's carried. Okay. So then item 22, the final item on our agenda, is just to note the next meeting, which is scheduled for Monday, the 24th of May at 6 p.m. Venue to be determined, or it will be held via video conferencing. Thank you.